Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
506, 507, wait, 5 more seconds. It's 507. Let's just call it 507. Hey, good morning. It's O'Connor and Company, 23rd day of June. Why does that sound familiar? Good morning. Good to have you here. As you can imagine, we've got a lot to unpack and dissect with regard to America's incredibly successful bombing of the Iranian nuclear facilities. We're going to unpack it from every possible angle, beginning at 6:35 with Manda Zand-Irvin, founder and president of the Alliance of Iranian Women. At 7:05, Joe DeGeneva on a lot of these Supreme Court decisions, and Democrats saying that they want to impeach President Trump for this military action. But whenever given the opportunity, they come out on the wrong side of an issue. At 7:35, Jonathan Schanzer, executive director of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. 8:05, Caroline Glick. She's an advisor to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And then at 8:35, RNC Chairman Michael Whatley on all these things and the disintegration of the Democratic National Committee. All that coming up. It's a big morning here. Thanks for joining us, Larry O'Connor, with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
Listen, there's still a lot of concerns about the aftermath, what happens in Iran, whether there will be regime change of any kind, whether President Trump has now moved the United States of America into a long-term engagement there with a forever war and troops on the ground and all of those things. And it's yet to be determined. If you look at President Trump's track record, he has engaged in military strikes at various times in his career, including the strikes in Syria, the strike against the former general of the Republican Guard of Iran, the effort to rid the world of ISIS, all of those and more, by the way. I'm leaving some out because I'm going off the top of my head. But, Julie, all of these things have one thing in common, which was they were targeted, they were focused, they were completed successfully, and then that was it. One and done, one and done, one and done seems to be the method of operation for President Trump. And based on everything that he was saying leading up to this military strike, the bombing of the nuclear facilities, he kept saying, I don't want a war. I don't want to get into war. But the problem is Iran will not make a deal, and they're way too close to getting a nuclear weapon, and so it has to be done. And basically that was his statement Saturday night after this successful operation, and it was incredibly successful. His post that he put out immediately after the strike was announced on Truth Social was, we have completed our very successful attack on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordo, Natanz, and Esfahan. All planes are now outside of Iran airspace. A full payload of bombs was dropped on the primary site, Fordo. All planes are safely on their way home. Congratulations to our great American warriors. There is not another military in the world that could have done this. Now is the time for peace. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I do like the thank you for your attention to this matter. Julie, we can get into the aftermath and what happens now and all of those things. It does seem by all indications that this was incredibly successful, and we had the statement from the president flanked by the vice president, the secretary of defense, and the secretary of state from the East Room. That was a great sign of success and strength and resolve. And the president kept saying, it's time for peace now. If Iran doesn't come forward and make peace with her neighbors, there will be more, which was an interesting, ominous threat. One thing is for certain, this will go down in history as one of the greatest military operations. If you think of those planes leaving from the heartland of Missouri and then flying over 30 hours round trip with their payload with multiple in-flight refuels, coming in stealthily, and the head fake. Everybody was watching these B-2s that went to Guam, and nobody was watching the B-2s that went to Iran. It was just,
that's right.
Everything about this was like clockwork. They're going to write a movie about this one day.
Well, they already did.
They sort of already did. Well, those weren't bombers that Tom Cruise was flying, but yes.
Yeah, there's been a lot of commentary on how similar this was to the movie Maverick, and this. I think mostly it's the skill required from these bombers and the planning. They have been planning this and practicing this. In Maverick, there was also practicing that went into this. That was like half the movie was them practicing these maneuvers, and they have been practiced in real life. There's been practices and planning, and so boy, I think there's been a lot of exhaling in Washington this weekend that it's done and it was successful.
And beyond just this weekend and the conversations that led up to it this past week, if everyone just hits the pause button for a second and, as you said, taking a deep breath or exhaling, just think about our entire lifetimes. I mean, one of my earliest memories as a child was the Iranian hostage ordeal. The horrific behavior of this terrorist state, they pop up once a decade at least, if not more. The deaths and the men without limbs that return from Iraq because of Iranian IEDs during that engagement.
Most major terrorist attacks in our lifetime have been because of Iran. They can trace back either a proxy or Iran itself. And I actually was looking over this weekend. Iran started enriching uranium in the 80s. They really ramped up in around 2000. Which, I feel like I say this every once in a while. I say, I've been in town a long time, but, when I was up on Capitol Hill, we were talking about this. This was a major issue. Yeah. I was up on Capitol Hill 20 years ago, and it was a major issue. So, people want, we've been dealing with this for a long time, and it really is very likely over now. It's destroyed. We still have to get sort of on the ground reports
It certainly seems like the nuclear threat is at least mitigated for another 20 years, let's say.
Yeah.
And you're right. And all presidents have been contemplating this move, including Democrat presidents, including Clinton, including Obama. And for everyone who is now very concerned, and understandably so, about a retaliatory terrorist attack, at a suburban mall or a movie theater or some other soft target here in the United States, or a terrorist attack coordinated by Iran or one of their proxies at one of our military bases in the Middle East, and that's understandable, and we should be on high alert for it. But if you're that concerned that this country could execute a terrorist attack and a suicide bombing or a car bomb or something, you should be just as concerned, if not more concerned, that they could have had a nuclear weapon. And yes, they were very close to that nuclear weapon. A lot of fallout, a lot of discussion. And the Democrats, as I said, other than John Fetterman, it appears, all seem to be on the wrong side of this issue. They cannot for a moment say this was a good thing for the world, a good thing for our allies, and a good thing for America. They immediately, the members of Congress are calling for impeachment over this.
Instantly.
So we'll get into all of that. And Margaret Brennan and David Muir, CBS and ABC respectively, they got the big sads over this too. So we'll unpack it all. We've got 4 hours to do so with lots of great guests. And we've got more in the news to cover as well, including that heat wave that we've been expecting. Well, it started yesterday, and it's going to hit full swing today. So stay with us as we've got traffic and weather every 10 minutes beginning right now, 5:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
And a lot of people did pause and reflect over the weekend, Julie, about the Iranian hostage situation that started under President Jimmy Carter, when Jimmy Carter gave asylum to the Shah of Iran when he was deposed by the mobs in the street. France, of course, gave safe haven to the Ayatollah Khomeini, who then returned triumphantly to oversee the revolution that then became the Islamic Republic of Iran. That's still their government structure as we know it, and they immediately inspired student terrorists to take over the U.S. Embassy, hold Americans hostage for over 400 days. They weren't released until the first day of the Ronald Reagan presidency in January of 1981. But as I said, for a lot of us, me included, that's one of my first memories. because,
Mine
why do
too.
I remember it? Because all the television shows that I like to watch were, news all the time. It's like a big story. It's like, hey, I want to watch, Happy Days. What's going on here?
Yeah.
And it was such a huge story. And it was like everybody was talking about Iran. No one knew Iran until that moment. And it really is sort of a major deal. I remember people talking about bombing Iran under Jimmy Carter, under Ronald Reagan.
That's what's so monumental about this, and I feel like some people can't really understand. I was, a very young child. I was probably 6 or 7.
Oh, I was going to say 6-month-old infant. Maybe.
Right. Thank you for that. It's so funny. I think I can still remember Jimmy Carter crying. And I told my mom I want him to be president because I felt bad for him. My mom still likes to poke me about that. You big Carter supporter. But I felt bad for him, right? I remember the blindfolded hostages, and it was so creepy to me. And then the Ayatollah.
Yeah, the way they paraded them out in front of the cameras.
The Ayatollah and the burning the American flag. It is so seared in my memory, and it scared me so bad as a child. It just seemed like monsters, And so this is, maybe it's a Gen X thing, but I mean, it was an emotional moment this weekend seeing this come to an end. Well, and hopefully come to an end.
By the way, just recently, I mean, under Barack Obama, the Iranian Navy, such as it is, took control of a U.S. Navy vessel.
That's right.
And took all of the sailors on board hostage, paraded the pictures, the video of those members of the United States Navy under the control and captivity.
Hands on top of their heads, yep.
Of Iran, yeah. And it's funny, at the Naval Academy, they actually use that for the young military officers as they're going through their training. They use that as a leadership test. You're an officer, you're in charge of that boat, it's seized by the Iranians, what do you do? And it's one of those, Kobayashi Maru kind of things from Star Trek, where there's not really a right or wrong answer necessarily. It's just a test of your ethics and your morals and your leadership. And I remember, not my child, but one of her classmates says, "Oh, we're going down fighting. We will not be paraded around in front of cameras." It's like, I don't know if that's the right answer, but it's a good one. We won't go down without a fight.
It's a good one for movies like Maverick, but maybe let's find a more.
But this is what Iran has been and continues to be. And by the way, the latest, as we're waking up, New York Times has the bullet points here. Israel continues launching strikes against Tehran and other Iranian cities. This happened early this morning. Israeli military said it has identified missiles launched from Iran. This is hours after Trump raised the prospect of regime change. President Trump took to Truth Social late last night and said it's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? MIGA. He's using MIGA now, by the way. Is it MIGA or MIGA? What do you think?
MIGA.
You like MIGA? All right. Mm-hmm. Great unity in the Republican Party, perhaps unity like we have never seen before. Now let's get the great, big, beautiful bill done. Our country is doing great, MAGA.
Of course, there was complete and utter... It was so funny because I just loved this weekend watching this sort of the never Trump neocons not quite know where to go with this.
Yeah.
They were like, I don't know whether to be mad or happy or I'm so confused. But you did see people immediately say, oh, here we go, nation building again. He never said maybe the U.S. should then help them out. He didn't say anything about the U.S.'s role.
Right. It's funny. The never Trump, as you say, opposition to things like that and skepticism about the bombing really came from sort of the Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens wing of the commentariat.
Yeah.
When it comes to, and the never Trumpers at the Bulwark, of course, are
who are Democrats
already, but they're not even never Trump conservatives. They're extreme left wing liberals at this point.
Yes.
But I'll leave you with this as we continue our conversation all morning. Jeb Bush, who I think is rightly described as an opponent to President Trump most of the time, he put this out on social media. Jeb, without an exclamation point, strangely. President Trump's decision to neutralize Iran's regime nuclear program is a watershed moment. It reasserts U.S. strength, restores deterrence, and sends an unmistakable message to rogue regimes. The era of impunity is over. He was happy about it, as were a lot of other people who may have opposed President Trump for some reasons, but said, yeah, this was a good thing that they did. Yeah. Which, of course, gave the Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens of the world additional pause. It's like, wait a second, if they're happy. These are confusing times. One thing is for sure, Democrats hated it. We'll get into their unhinged response and the media coming up. It's 5:23.
You guys know the story of Mahmoud Khalil. He's that foreign national here on a student visa. He's like 40, still a student. And he was in ICE detainment for a couple months. Well, he was released, and you heard all the comments about him having a new baby and being separated from his family. Well, he didn't get out and go and hang out with his family. He just engaged in more protesting. We've got the story. Keep it here. It's 5:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:37 as we continue a busy morning here, 23rd day of June, this Monday, coming off of the successful airstrike. You know, we've been mentioning, Julie, that the Army and the Navy have both announced that they have exceeded their recruitment numbers ahead of schedule. I'm thinking the Air Force will be making an announcement this week.
Yes.
After
definitely.
This incredible story of these B-2s out of Missouri. Coming up at 6:35, Manda Zand Irvin. She's the founder of the Alliance of Iranian Women. She'll talk about that horrific regime. 7:05, Joe DeGeneva. 7:35, Jonathan Schanzer, Foundation for Defense of Democracies. 8:05, Caroline Glick, who's actually an advisor to Prime Minister Netanyahu. And then at 8:35, RNC Chairman Michael Whatley. It's Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Jules.
Good morning.
So this activist, Mahmoud Khalil, who was a coordinator of the anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist, anti-American protests that really turned into destructive riots over the summer last year on Ivy League college campuses, including Columbia. He had been detained, of course, by the State Department. Well, the State Department withdrew his visa, and he was detained by ICE and was in a detention facility waiting deportation while his legal proceedings continued. He was released over the weekend.
Yes.
And he, you know, one of the arguments about this guy was, you know, he married an American citizen, and he's now a new father. He's got a newborn baby, and he can't even go out and take care of his baby and hold his child and help diaper his baby. What will his poor suffering wife do? Yeah. And of course, the government argued that.
And they trotted out the wife too to say the same stuff. Oh, I'm suffering, about to have a baby, so horrible, family separation. You heard all that stuff.
Exactly, and of course, the government's argument was that he was an activist and that he was undermining American policy and the policy of the State Department and damaging our and everyone who's like, oh, free speech, he can protest. Yeah, he's not an American citizen. He doesn't have the right to do this. He's here under certain conditions. And, you know, when the activists up in Columbia seized a building, the Hamilton building, and took it over and terrorized the janitors who were working in there and broke things, defaced things, vandalized the place. When the police showed up and said they got to leave, this was the guy who was like the spokesperson. He was the negotiator. He was the guy, all right, well, you want him to get out. Let's talk terms. It's like this is not just some person who happened to be sitting there, you know, on a sit-in at a college campus.
Also, this idea, they like to, you know, say that he's a student. You know, he's a student activist. He's like 40-something years old. He's a professional protester who enrolls in some classes, okay? And he's a foreign national who comes here, and I mean, Jewish students do not feel safe on Columbia's campus, largely due to this guy. And
Yeah.
we just tolerate it.
Mahmoud Khalil. He was released on bail after a judge determined that his prolonged detention was illegal. So they let him out. And you would think, that we would immediately see the cameras follow him to his child's nursery so he could, burp
Right.
the baby and change the diapers and
Give
sit
his
in
wife a break.
Yeah, give his wife a break, sit in a rocking chair with the little baby falling asleep on his shoulder. And it's like, oh, thank God he can be reunited with his baby. Nope. One day later, he was there in Times Square leading the marches, leading the chants of protesters who were
With a
very
bullhorn.
angry.
Yep.
Very angry at the bombing of Iran, and they were screaming global. He was there leading the chants, saying "Globalize the Intifada." Here, cut one here. Take a listen. Here's Mahmoud Khalil, finally out of ICE detention, so that he can be with his newborn.
Palestine will live forever. Palestine will live forever. From the river to the sea.
There you go.
Palestine will be free.
That's right. From the river to the sea, of course, for those of you who don't know, by now means eliminate all the Jews from that space and destroy the Israel state. So there you go. Mahmoud
time to
Khalil. And by the
deport
way,
him.
the
It's time
media
to deport
reports
him.
on him, they still call him a student. They still refer to him as Columbia University student. He's not a student.
Maryland dad,
Right.
it's all the same.
It's all the same. Yeah. Immediately back to protesting. Immediately back. And I don't see the wife or the baby anywhere. Do you? I'm looking.
I think she was there. I think she was there when he was released, and then quickly told to go.
Yeah, no,
sit down.
I mean in the march down
no.
the streets of.
I don't know that
of
she's
New York.
even probably allowed.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't see any
when
pictures
is he
of
going to be deported?
Well, you know what? That's a great question. We will ask our legal analyst, former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Joe DeGeneva. He will join us at 7:05. We've got that to ask him, along with a whole lot of other things going on right now, the Supreme Court decisions that we had last week, and whether there's any grounds for impeachment, that the Democrats are screaming for impeachment of Donald Trump. We'll see if that goes anywhere. So Joe DeGeneva joining us at 7:05.
WMAL, making sense of the headlines because common sense isn't so common. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
And we move from the Columbia student who isn't a Columbia student, Mahmoud Khalil, to the Maryland man who is not a Maryland man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia. As you know, he was returned to the United States. He was immediately arraigned on criminal charges of multiple counts of human trafficking, along with child pornography, child endangerment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He's been held without bail in a criminal court. A judge decided over the weekend that they couldn't continue to hold him without bail, and he must be released. Now, before you get too concerned about this guy walking amongst, the grocery stores of Greater Maryland, buying some Old Bay so that he can have a nice crab cookout in the backyard, being the Maryland man that he is, don't worry. He will continue to be held in an immigration facility, an ICE facility. He's not going to be walking the streets of the United States, and the judge will have no control over the ICE facility. As far as we know, there's absolutely no reason why ICE needs to release this guy. There is a development here, though, and I have to point it out. The New York Times headline, can I read it to you? Do you mind?
Yes.
Judge orders Salvadoran man released on smuggling charges.
I'm just surprised they said man and not dad.
But Salvadoran, not Maryland.
Yes.
We've turned a corner here with the New York Times.
You're right. I should be happy.
I would love to ask the editorial staff at the New York Times why. What is the standard now? What is the standard? Because for weeks they were referring to this guy as a Maryland man, and now suddenly he's a Salvadoran man. Is it because he was in El Salvador for a month and a half before he was returned to the U.S.?
I think
is that it? That's the criteria?
I think they're starting to realize that his rap sheet makes it not a good idea for him to stay in the United States. Maybe it's better that he go home.
Sure, but again, these are newspapers. Democracy dies in darkness, Julie.
Thank you, Larry.
And these are publications that consider themselves the custodians of the truth. regardless, even inconvenient truths, whether you like those truths or not, facts are facts. And up until this point, he was a Maryland man, and now suddenly he's a Salvadoran man. Which is it, and how do you decide that? And I think
Larry,
if they're open with their readers, they would actually explain this shift.
Maybe he has changed his own identity. Maybe he now identifies as a Salvadoran, not an American. I'm sorry, Maryland dad. Maybe he would rather be called a Salvadorian man. I go through that too. Sometimes I want to be a supermodel, and I just tell people to call me a supermodel.
Hey, well, you know what? That's fair enough. And I hadn't thought of that. I hadn't taken that into consideration before they write their headlines. They usually do check the human smugglers and child pornographers how they would like to be referred to.
Yes.
Good. What is your descriptor of choice?
That's right.
And I guess apparently now he's a Salvadoran man. And by the way, they've added another name to his. Forever he was Kildemar Abrego Garcia. They've added an Armando in there. I don't know where the Armando came from.
Where does it fit in?
Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia. No hyphen, by the way, just a whole lot of names. In a sharp rebuke to the Justice Department, a federal judge said on Sunday that Kildemar Armando Abrego Garcia should be freed from criminal custody as he awaits trial on smuggling charges after his wrongful deportation to El Salvador and return to the United States. Again, based on that paragraph, I can't quite understand why he's suddenly become a Salvador man, but that's fine. That's fine. The decision by Judge Barbara Holmes, I could have bet that it was a woman who decided this. No offense to women in general.
Women.
Yeah. The decision by Judge Holmes, filed in federal district court in Nashville, was likely to be short-lived victory for Mr. Abrego Garcia and his defense team. The judge acknowledged that he would probably remain in the custody of immigration officials as his charges of smuggling undocumented immigrants across the United States move through the courts. Funny thing,
did she
even
offer
if you're even if you're in the country legally and you're arrested for this sort of thing, ICE can detain you. Add to that he was never in the country legally, and it's not going to end up well for.
Did they manage to tell us if the judge then showed him the back door? Probably
right, and shuttle him out. No, I don't think he was ever released from handcuffs, for that matter. I think he had the bracelets on the entire time. The government is appealing this decision, by the way. And, this will be yet another thing that we can run by Joe DeGenova at 7:05. So you're going to want to. We should just let Joe know that
he's staying twice.
It's going to be two segments.
Maybe three.
Maybe the whole. We can't do the whole 7 o'clock hour because we are loaded up here on the Around story. But yeah, there's the update on your formerly Maryland man, but now Salvadoran man. We're still waiting to hear from the New York Times specifically about why the shift, why the change. I'm sure they'll explain it to their readers.
Oh, yeah.
It's 5:52.